The valley was silent, the tension palpable. Allied forces were pinned down, outnumbered, and running out of options. Enemy fire raked the hillsides, and the radio crackled with desperate calls for help. Just when hope seemed lost, the deafening roar of an A-10 Warthog shattered the chaos, diving into the fray with precision that could turn the tide in seconds. Could one pilot's daring change the fate of an entire battle? The sun had barely risen over the jagged peaks when the first shots rang out, echoing across the narrow valley like a grim announcement. Dust rose in pale clouds from the rocky terrain, obscuring the view of the struggling troops below. Allied forces, exhausted and outnumbered, huddled behind crumbling ridges and overturned vehicles, their rifles trembling in the hands of soldiers who had already seen too many friends fall. Every second that passed brought more enemy reinforcements down the slopes, tightening the noose around those trapped in the valley floor. Private First Class Ramirez pressed his back against a jagged boulder, heart hammering in rhythm with the distant gunfire. He glanced at the squad beside him. Sergeant Lane's face was streaked with sweat and dirt, eyes scanning the hills for any weakness in the enemy line. The valley was a cage. Every escape route had been cut off. Every attempt to call for reinforcements had been met with static, frustration, and the faint echo of panic creeping over the radio waves. "We are sitting ducks," Ramirez muttered under his breath, a statement half to himself, half to the universe. Above them, the sky seemed impossibly wide, a stark contrast to the claustrophobic valley below. Every soldier's gaze flicked upward, instinctively seeking salvation in the blue, but all they saw were the empty clouds, teasing them with freedom they couldn't reach. The enemy pressed forward, their coordinated advance methodical, cold, and unrelenting. Sniper fire picked off soldiers as they tried to move from cover to cover, and mortar shells cracked the earth near their positions, throwing shards of rock and debris into the air. The valley was alive with chaos, and every movement could be a soldier's last. Amid the chaos, tension tightened like a noose around their collective chest. Radio calls crackled intermittently, shouting coordinates, requests, and warnings. One voice, strained and urgent, broke through the static. "We need air support." Repeat, "Air support. Position is compromised." For a moment, hope flickered, fragile and fleeting, but it was hope nonetheless. Ramirez gripped his rifle tighter, swallowing hard. They all knew what air support meant, the difference between survival and annihilation. But every second without it drew the enemy closer. Then came the faint, almost unnoticeable rumble in the distance. It was subtle at first, like a growl carried on the wind. Heads turned skyward, squinting into the sun-bleached morning. The sound grew steadily, transforming into a deafening roar that drowned out even the crack of gunfire. A shadow cut across the valley floor, a metallic predator descending from the sky. The A-10, its titanium frame gleaming in the early light, appeared like a ghost of war, ready to carve a path through the chaos below. The trap soldiers exchanged stunned glances. Could this lone aircraft really change the course of the battle? High above the chaos, Captain Avery Hawk Jensen gripped the controls of her A-10 Warthog, her eyes scanning the valley through the HUD with laser focus. Years of training had led to this moment, yet nothing could fully prepare anyone for the raw terror and intensity of a battlefield alive with panic, smoke, and fire. Her fingers danced over the cockpit switches with practiced precision, a ballet of metal and instinct. Somewhere below, Allied soldiers were pinned, their lives teetering on the edge of annihilation, and Hawk's orders were clear: intervene. She had flown countless sorties, faced insurgents and armored convoys, but the desperation in the radio calls made this different. The fear, the stakes, the way the valley funneled friend and foe into a single, deadly corridor, it was a perfect storm, a challenge that demanded every ounce of skill and courage. Hawk's co-pilot, Lieutenant Daniels, checked the targeting systems one last time. "Weapons are green. Maverick. You ready to dance?" he asked, his attempt at levity bouncing off the tension in the cockpit. Hawk smirked briefly. "Always." Below, the enemy soldiers had no idea what was coming. Their formations, confident moments ago, began to falter as the distant roar of the A-10 grew louder, reverberating off the valley walls. For Hawk, it was more than a machine. It was a tool of precision and control in a world that had descended into chaos. She lined up her first attack run, the nose dipping slightly as she dove toward the enemy line, unleashing a spray of 30mm rounds with pinpoint accuracy. The air filled with fire and smoke, the ground erupting under the devastating impact. Shouts from the valley floor turned to stunned silence as the enemy scattered, caught off guard by the sudden fury from above. The radio crackled with relief and disbelief. "Did you see that?" "She just..." Sergeant Lane's voice was cut short by the thunderous cannon fire shaking the earth. Below, Ramirez and his squad pressed forward, emboldened by the sudden shift. Hawk maintained her dive, weaving between terrain and enemy fire with surgical precision. Every movement was calculated, every shot deliberate. Her mind remained calm amidst the chaos, each decision a line of code executed perfectly. Target, fire, retreat, repeat. As the first wave of enemy forces broke apart, the soldiers in the valley caught their breath. For the first time that morning, there was hope. Hawk's presence didn't just change the battlefield, it changed the psychology of the fight. Fear shifted from one side to the other, uncertainty gave way to opportunity. Yet Hawk knew this was only the beginning. The valley was far from secured, and every choice from here on out could mean life or death for the troops below. The A-10's engine screamed, a herald of destruction, as Hawk prepared for her next pass. She wasn't just a pilot. She was the difference between survival and defeat. And the valley, once a trap, was about to witness the full force of an unstoppable weapon. The roar of the A-10 was deafening now, a relentless hammer striking fear into the enemy's ranks. Captain Avery Hawk Jensen's Warthog cut across the valley with deadly precision, each pass systematically dismantling the opposition. From her cockpit, she saw the chaos unfold below, the enemy scattering, abandoning strongholds, and struggling to regroup under the weight of her assault. Every round from the GAU-8 Avenger cannon tore through the terrain, turning fortified positions into rubble and giving the pinned soldiers a lifeline they hadn't dared hope for. On the ground, Private Ramirez's hands shook with adrenaline as he peered over the ridge. The enemy's advance had stalled, their numbers thinning with each deafening pass of the A-10. Sergeant Lane barked orders, urging the squad to push forward now that the balance had shifted. "Move. We've got the chance." The troops surged, climbing over rocks and debris with renewed determination. The fear that had gripped them only moments ago transformed into resolve. The impossible, the trapped, the hopeless, was now a battlefield they could fight to reclaim. Hawk didn't let up. She banked the plane, scanning for any hidden threats, and unleashed another salvo. Smoke and fire erupted from enemy vehicles and positions, illuminating the valley in a hellish glow. Her timing was flawless, her maneuvers instinctive. Every soldier on the ground was now aware of the A-10's power, every enemy movement disrupted, and the valley itself seemed to bend to the will of the aircraft slicing through the sky. Hawk's heart raced, not from fear, but from the clarity of purpose. This was why she flew, why she trained, why she risked it all. Amid the chaos, a moment of quiet clarity emerged. Ramirez and his squad reached the crest of a ridge and looked down on what was left of the enemy's line. They were battered but no longer beaten. The A-10's relentless assault had carved a corridor of safety, giving the Allied soldiers a foothold in terrain that had moments ago been a death trap. Cheers erupted, shaky but genuine, carried on the echoes of cannon fire and jet engines. Hawk caught the sound through her radio, a simple, understated reminder of why she did this job. The battle was far from over, but the valley's outcome had shifted in their favor. Hawk banked once more, taking in the scene below, Allied soldiers moving with confidence, enemy forces retreating in disarray. The valley transformed from a tomb into a stage of triumph. One pilot, one aircraft, one precise series of actions had changed the course of the fight. The roar of the A-10 lingered in the ears of everyone present, a testament to the difference one determined individual could make. And as Hawk climbed into the sky, preparing for the next challenge, the soldiers below knew that today, they had witnessed the power of courage in motion, an unstoppable force clearing the valley when all hope seemed lost.